Part 14. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me. Chapter 131. Turning her head to look at the number of people present, there were quite a few. In addition to Shasha, many people were called out to find Gao Qiang. Thinking that everyone had basically not eaten, Juluo smiled and shook her head. Cooking for so many people would be hard work for her. Forget it, let's all taste the most simple craftsmanship this time. A big fire rose on the ground, and wooden sticks with huge pieces of meat were put on the fire for grilling. Combined with the secret spices made by Juluo using local materials. After a while, the sizzling barbecue appeared in front of everyone. Slurp. Shasha swallowed her saliva. This time, not to mention Shasha, even Gao Qiang couldn't resist the temptation. Such a huge barbecue with firm meat, bright color, and even no bones, in the past, I'm afraid it would only appear in comic books, right? And this was only using the insignificant amount of meat from the two gods of shaking mountains and stabilizing mountains. I can only say that he is worthy of being a god, and he is much more tolerant of wild game than ordinary game. Wow! Before the barbecue was done, Data Deleted had already jumped to the fire, grabbed a skewer of barbecue and put it to his mouth to eat it. Hemoglobin flowed along the corners of Data Deleted's mouth, adding a different color to the pure black Data Deleted. But looking at that square body that was as bouncy as jelly, no one could feel any horror on him. After a while, it seemed that the fire was almost ready. Juluo handed another half-person high skewer to Gao Qiang. Yes, Lord, you and Shasha will eat first. Okay. Before Gao Qiang spoke, Shasha had already pounced on Gao Qiang and bit into the huge skewer. Golden juice flowed down the corners of Shasha's mouth. Gao Qiang seemed to realize for the first time that Shasha could actually look so cute. As he watched, Gao Qiang took a bite of the part that had not been ruined by Shasha. Then, an indescribable burst of juicy pleasure burst out in his mouth. Juluo's cuisine retains the purest aroma of meat, and combined with simple spices, it is another unique and ultimate enjoyment. You take the mythical cuisine, mountain barbecue, and your personal talent enjoyer is satisfied. In this game, your people's combat effectiveness against mythical units increases by 10%. Burp. After a while, including Data Deleted, everyone collapsed on the ground with a burp. Even so, the refugees of the 9 righteous gods in the distance did not dare to approach. From the time Juluo and others appeared until now, they have been kneeling there. Only by witnessing the true body of the only true God can you know where the source of the horror of this world comes from. Of course, few people care about them. The whole person feels full of fighting spirit. Shasha clenched her fist and snorted. If you don't look at her bulging belly, she still looks quite impressive. After eating and drinking, it's time to chat. As if she had thought of something, Sasha took out the recipe that hid her head before. Ding 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 ding. Our Bible. Gao Qiang touched his body, and the recipe he got from Juluo seemed to have fallen out when he was jumping around in Data Delete. Unexpectedly, Sasha happened to pick it up. Could this be the legendary, God's will? At this time, Sasha had already opened the Bible in her hand under the curious eyes of many people. Flipping through the Bible, Sasha nodded and chanted in a missionary tone. The wisdom of our ancestors is infinite. Countless years ago, our ancestors discovered the advanced theory that books have their own canteens, which other ignorant people don't know at all. It is a shame for us to let these precious books be buried in the dust for thousands of years. The book records that cooking gods should pay attention to the right time, right place, and right people. Among them, stir-frying, deep-frying, roasting, stewing and braising are all memorable. Awoo! Data Deleted responded in a low voice, as if agreeing with Sasha's statement. However, just when many people were listening to Sasha's speech seriously, a cold smile gradually emerged in the shadow behind Sasha. Baihexio suddenly widened his eyes. With his sharp vision, he naturally noticed the abnormality of Sasha's shadow and picked up the musket in his hand in time. Bang! The bullets of the musket hit the ground and failed to hurt Sasha's shadow at all. But the existence in the shadow had realized that he was exposed, and suddenly drilled out of Sasha's shadow and grabbed the Bible in Sasha's hand with a black claw. Rip! The book in Sasha's hand was annihilated into ash in a twist. "What are you doing?" Sasha tilted her head, her eyes seemed to have lost focus. "I don't know what to order for the next meal. Her cafeteria is gone." He. The shadow turned around and appeared above the sky when he reappeared. As the god of trickery, he is best at misleading and deceiving. What does the demise of the trickery god system have to do with him, the god of trickery? I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that I could really trick that being. He also got something that he had never thought of before. The Bible that stagnated the holy power. The god of tricks looked at the ordinary people on the ground with a sarcastic smile. Time is like flowing fine sand, eroding everything of them bit by bit. In his 10,000 years of sleep, he almost forgot what happened 10,000 years ago. If he hadn't been full of resentment towards the being who destroyed the era of the gods, he might have disappeared in the long river of time like other righteous gods. Presumably, the being that he hated for 10,000 years would not be in a better situation than him. And just now, he destroyed the other party's holy book with his own hands. Unlike the original gods, the sleeping gods almost all have the power to break through the boundaries. But they, who are high above the sky, have lost the body that can stand on the earth like the original gods. For a righteous god, destroying the Bible is almost destroying the foundation of the other party's faith and the foundation of their foothold. The demise of the god of tricks is nothing. Behind the god of tricks, there are still a large number of righteous gods who are awakening. And what about him? Even if he wakes up, what will happen? His followers cannot regain the glory of the past. Even as an old god, under the siege of the gods, he is just a fish on the chopping board. Hey, why is there a fishy smell? The god of tricks turned his head and looked behind him. What he saw was a bloody mouth covering the entire block. Wow! Everything fell into silence, as if the guy who just laughed wildly did not exist. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita Dit. Chapter 132. Only Shasha was still depressed, hugging her legs and squatting on the spot. She actually had her most important recipe destroyed by a fool who could only laugh. Isn't Sasha very useless? 2 clear tears dropped from the corners of Shasha's eyes. Gao Qiang opened his mouth and was about to comfort him when he suddenly received another friend message from Maixier. Today is also the cute little fairy, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. 3 bad things happened in a row, which was enough to show how anxious Ixier was at the moment. She even threw aside the habit of calling her friends in her friend messages. And what makes the Saint Isel so anxious is naturally a big event. We miscalculated what this war game was going to be like. There's something very wrong with this war game. As he spoke, Ixier sent over a large list of information, but there was no further information. In the previous battle plan, the appearance of gods would not completely disrupt the development of the battle. As a result, just when the god of conspiracy was completely dead, the awakening progress of many righteous gods was further accelerated, and Ahil realized that her guess was completely wrong. This mutated war game seems to be broken. Obviously everyone's technology tree limit is locked at the limit of the second level war game. But Ahir was horrified to find that for the gods who served as backgrounds, they seemed not to be subject to this restriction. Just now, the Dark God system controlled by the Shadow Clan also experienced changes. The traitors buried in Shadow Clan by the Saints were also lost around the same time. The last message he sent back was, "The gods are not with us." After reading Ixier's information, Gao Qiang's first reaction was, has another righteous god awakened? It seems that every time a righteous god dies, the awakening progress of other righteous gods is aggravated. But after realizing this, Gao Qiang suddenly had a ridiculous idea. Could it be that his joining in the middle caused this already mutated war game to mutate again? After all, according to common sense, those righteous gods who serve as the backdrop cannot be killed. Suddenly, a new piece of news came from Ike's ear. The Lord of Holy Light has completely awakened. Wish us good luck. It seemed that she smelled something different from the information about the traitor from the Shadow Clan. The game has completely changed. From believers controlling the pantheon to gods controlling believers. The original practice of rushing to join and master the major righteous gods has now become as shackles for the lords of all races. Those righteous gods are too strong to resist, so they can only become puppets. Gao Qiang suddenly closed his eyes and connected to the holy seat above Suyukei's territory. He wanted to see what the east side had become. The perspective changed. As soon as Gao Qiang connected to the perspective of his eyes, he was dazzled by a strong glare. The figure of the Lord of Holy Light is no longer hidden, but appears completely in the sky above the cathedral. Countless paladins are worshipping in the same direction. The lords who were part of the war game were trembling as they looked at the subjects in their hands. They realized a terrifying possibility. All it takes is one word from the Lord of Holy Light, and all the power they possess will change hands directly. In front of the righteous God, they are worthless and have nothing. Everything is just a wedding dress prepared for the God to wake up. And look outside the city wall. The location of the life god system is full of greenery, and the trees have grown to abnormal heights. The dark god system turned into a lightless area, and even the light from the Lord of Holy Light could not illuminate a single ray of space. In another direction, the sound of war drums seems to be erupting all the time in the direction of the war god system. The god of war has already prepared for war. When they woke up, almost every decent god with head and face woke up from the ancient silence. But it is different from all ethnic groups. Their goal is not the holy light, sun, bright moon, and other gods controlled by the saints. The lords of other races are no different from humans. They cannot influence God's thoughts. After all, God is the real master of the gods. But now, these gods have set their sights on the west. From the different looks in the eyes of the gods in the sky, Gao Qiang knew very well that the prophecy of the Lord of Holy Light was about to come true. Take your eyes back from your eye position. Gao Qiang looked seriously at Chasha, who was still crying, and stroked her hair with his hand. The book is gone, we can just write another one. We will personally correct the 40th edition that our ancestors did not write. Awv. On the other side, the big square made a terrifying sound, seeming to agree with what Gao Qiang just said. Write another one. Shasha raised her head and looked at the other citizens. Baihexia rubbed his nose. Although I really don't want to move. But some guys went too far when they went outside our territory and bullied our saint. Only then did Gao Qiang remember that Shasha had a profession as a saint. After Baihexia finished speaking, many other citizens nodded in agreement. Everyone. Sasha sniffed her nose hard, stood up, and seemed to have regained her spirits. Then let's rewrite our own Bible. Also, the gods have pissed us off, eat them up. Oh. Since your bottom line has been ruthlessly touched by the gods. Your territory type has been changed to, Awakening Empire, Revival of Holy Power. The gears of fate move forward, and the news of the awakening of the gods does not seem to be ignored by the fallen empire. The eternal enemies look at each other again, although their hatred has faded slightly in the long river of history. The gods' destruction of the Bible has completely ignited the ancient hatred. The people under your command have sharpened their blades and looked towards the familiar yet unfamiliar world. Now, the whole world will be used to continue this ancient duel. Effect 6 has been removed, and you have obtained the awakening feature. Awakening Empire, Revival of Holy Power. Effect 1, you will unlock all the recruitment rights of the arms and building blueprints that belong exclusively to the Awakening Empire. Effect 2, you don't need to spend any resources to recruit soldiers. When you use any of the people in the Pantheon to recruit soldiers, there is no training time. Effect 3, the number of soldiers you recruit is not limited by the total number of people. Huh. Gao Qiang looked at the excited people. The sudden awakening caught Gao Qiang off guard. So what was the reason for this awakening? Because the black shadow that only knew how to laugh just now destroyed the recipe? Or was it completely attracted by the charm of the mythical ingredients? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 133. But since he has successfully awakened, Gao Qiang doesn't have to worry about those things anymore. A smile hung on his lips. Finally, he can open the long-lost recruitment and construction interface again. The first is the recruitment interface. The Knights of the Church and the Witch Hunters will definitely not be enough when facing many righteous gods in the future. Even if the Witch Hunter's hunting bullet is very strong, it has not broken through the upper limit of this feudal era. In other words, it can only deal with the new gods. And those old gods who have awakened from their slumber almost all have the power to break through the upper limit of the world. For this reason, Gao Qiang needs a stronger and more mysterious power. Sort the combat power from high to low in the recruitment interface. On Gao Qiang's recruitment list this time, the first one is Huangquan Saint. Huangquan Saint. Introduction. It is said that after drinking the water of the forgotten river, all souls will forget everything in their lives and wander forever in the Huangquan road. Training requirements, Huangquan X1. Features, twins, Huangquan, Huangquan. Twins, this unit can change its form freely. Huangquan, calls for a fog covering the river, and all people crossing the river have a chance to get lost in the river. Huangquan, calls for the bodies of lost people to return, and attacks an area indiscriminately. The training unit of the saint actually needs Huangquan? Gao Qiang glanced at Sasha subconsciously. What is the use of Sasha, the saint? Why is the recruitment requirement for the saint profession not her? Resisting the desire to complain in his heart, Gao Qiang still pressed the recruitment option. The recruitment option quickly went dark. It seems that Huangquan Saint can't recruit infinitely. Gao Qiang also has some guesses about this. The rules of different war games are not quite the same. And Huangquan Saint is obviously a hero unit unique to the mysterious. This unit is not counted among ordinary units, and naturally cannot trigger the characteristics of unlimited recruitment of the Awakening Empire. As Gao Qiang was thinking this, a low humming sound came from the bottom of the riverbed. Walk hesitantly along the bank of the Huangquan River, don't look back as the road to the underworld is long. As the sound came closer and closer, Huangquan, with lifeless eyes, appeared in everyone's sight. Unlike before, Huangquan was now wearing a khaki robe, not as cute as before, but a little more majestic. Wow, Sister Huangquan changed clothes, Sasha said subconsciously. Huangquan didn't pay attention to Sasha, but walked to the refugees and helped the old traveler up. Thank you. The old man didn't seem to be very used to this posture. Just when Huangquan did this, Gao Qiang was once again flooded with war games. The god of the North Wind has been incorporated into your pantheon, and you can recruit the special arms of the god of the North Wind. The Aurora Lord has been incorporated into your pantheon, and you can recruit the special arms of the Aurora Lord. It seemed that in the moment when Huangquan just passed, all the refugees directly surrendered to Gao Qiang and became a vassal force similar to the vassal army. After checking the special arms of several righteous gods, Gao Qiang shook his head in disappointment. They are all crooked. For some reason, the quality of these righteous gods in the west seems to be much lower than that in the east. Among them, the Aurora Lord and the Lord of Holy Light seem to be similar in concept. But in fact, the Holy Light can appear extremely violent, while the Aurora is beautiful and gentle, and the special arms of the two are naturally very different. Bard. Features: Ode, Elegy. Ode, greatly improve our morale, slightly reduce our war weariness, and very slightly increase our attack speed. Elegy, greatly reduce the enemy's morale and slightly increase the enemy's war weariness. The special arms of the Aurora Lord are almost incomparable with those of the Paladin. If the special arms of the Aurora Lord are like this, it seems normal that the Aurora system was conquered by the primitive gods and barbarians. On the other hand, after surrendering to the revival of the holy power, Gao-Qiang can also train them as warriors without consumption. However, the believers of these other gods can only be trained as their own special arms, and cannot be trained as arms of the old system as a requirement. In this way, the only advantage of these refugees is probably their large number. After clicking on the training of many vassal armies, Gao-Qiang continued to look at his own unique arms. After turning a few pages, don't say it, he seems to have blamed Shasha wrongly. Because in the training list, in addition to the Yellow Spring Saint, there is another saint unit that can be trained. Old Flag-Bearing Saint. Introduction: she is good at waving the flag in her hand and commanding others to charge. Training requirements: Saint X1. Features: Old Holy Flag, encouragement, intimidation, taunting, enraging. Old Holy Flag, a mythical flag depicting the appearance of data deleted. Within the coverage of the Holy Flag, all our dead units enter the countdown to resurrection. If the flag bearer dies, the Holy Flag will be planted alone in the ground for a period of time until it is destroyed. Training. Gao-Qiang was a little curious about what the so-called Old Holy Flag was. As a result, he saw data deleted S2 shorthands rummaging in his body, and took out a flag made of black wool from his body and handed it to Shasha. The flag was painted with a square-shaped data deleted, and the data deleted in the painting was cutely holding a big piece of barbecue. Gao-Qiang could already imagine the scene of Sasha waving the flag. It seems a little too weird. As for the remaining units, they are basically all repeatable. For example, the waiters are trained as field engineers. Compared with the Stone Age, their construction options are obviously much more. Because of the extra steel, these engineers can even rub armored vehicles similar to armored carriages anywhere. As for combat, Gao-Qiang chose a special mysterious unit. Pagan Knights. Introduction: to everyone, they are complete heretics, but at this moment, they are judging heretics with their knight guns. Training requirements: 1 leader. Features: myth resistance, extreme toughness, mysterious nemesis, master level cold weapon mastery, master level hot weapon mastery. Myth resistance: their reason affects their cognition. Gods don't seem to be anything great. The influence of myth units is reduced by 90%. Mysterious nemesis: pagan knights are heretics of concepts. They will cause triple damage to all mysterious or mythological creatures. After training all available targets as pagan knights, the people in front of Gao-Qiang left for a while. When they came back from the dry riverbed of the Forgotten River, they had all turned into iron cans covered with armor. The knight's gun in his hand exuded a cold light, and he carried a large caliber musket on his back, exuding a sense of deterrence all the time. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 134. On the other side, the special arms of the 9 righteous gods have also been trained. The bard of the Aurora Saint played a long song. The stone soul vanguard of the mountain god held a huge shield like a solid wall. With the blessing of the awakening characteristics, the refugees who lost their temples and homes have become the most powerful warriors of the gods again. Although the special arms of several righteous gods are still somewhat different from the old system. But if you lower your standards, Gao Qiang thinks it is actually quite remarkable. At least in the professional field, these special arms can be stronger than the mediocre 5 elements god system. At this time, the old traveler had followed Wang Chuan and walked close to Gao Qiang. Slightly stabilizing his trembling body, the old man lowered his head and sighed to Gao Qiang in a low voice. The order of this world has been completely broken. Since I was born, this world has been shrouded in war. I don't know how long it has lasted, and I don't know how long it will last. Even if we gather at the feet of the great righteous gods, we will only be slowly eroded and swallowed by this broken world. Listening to the words of the old man, many people secretly clenched their fists. Who is not a refugee among those who gather outside the Wangchuan River? And the reason they became refugees is naturally that their homes were slaughtered, their relatives fled, and even the statues of gods they worshipped were completely overthrown. There is no place for them in this world. In this case, no matter how bad this world is, it will not get worse. I have spent my life wandering around the world in order to find a way to reshape the world order. And when I passed by here, I think I found it. The old man looked up at Gao Qiang and said in a firm tone. Now you only need one order, and all the children present are willing to charge for you, even in the face of gods. Even in the face of gods. In front of the old man, Wang Chuan's mouth suddenly raised a slight arc. This arc looked extremely strange on Wang Chuan's face, which had never shown any expression. With his hands raised in front of his chest, Wang Chuan's voice, like the low hum of an ancient god, came out. We have never seen heaven, but we will bring hell back to the world. The reminder sound of the war game sounded at the same time. Every lord in this war game received a notification from the war game. Event, the war of heaven has been triggered. The ancient hatred has completely evolved into a full-scale war between the holy power of the Renaissance and the gods. They promised to add generous rewards to their vassals and punish all those who disobeyed. Now there are only two options for both sides, friends and enemies. Supporting either side means that we will give up our sovereignty, but neutrality may be more dangerous. So who will win and share the final heaven? When the event was triggered, three options appeared in front of all lords. We have decided to support the revival of the holy power and the wall of size. Choose this option to automatically become a vassal of the revival of the holy power and join the total war against the gods. We will pledge allegiance to the gods. Choose this option to maintain the status of a believer of the gods and join the total war against the revival of the holy power. We will not stand on either side. Choose this option to automatically leave your own pantheon and join the total war against the revival of the holy power and the gods at the same time. Lord. Zhulo's call came from Gao Qiang's ears. Behind her, hundreds of thousands of troops were ready to go. Do you remember what we said before? Gao Qiang recalled for a few seconds, and then understood what Zhulo meant. Of course I remember. He smiled slightly towards the sky in the east. Just a bunch of people who are traitors. Inside the cathedral of the Holy Light Pantheon. Bathed in the grace of the Lord of Holy Light, Izir fell into an inexplicable state of calm. She did not send any more messages to Gao Qiang. Because she knew that the nature of this game had changed again. The division of forces based on race that everyone had finally adjusted to was completely disintegrated because of the awakening of the gods. Now, the victory of this game has become confusing. The gods gave her a very wrong feeling. This kind of existence seems to be more worthy of being dealt with by those lords who are proficient in the 4th level or even 5th level battlefields. Rather than a newly promoted son of God like her. Of course, the most entangled question for Aisyer is how this game should end. After the awakening of the gods, religious victory and ruling victory have become a joke. Even if the believers agree, those high-ranking gods will never allow themselves to become vassals of others. The war led by the gods is almost impossible to end. Because no god dares to say that he has the power to suppress the entire world. In this way, perhaps this game has only one ending: victory in the war. War victory, when the number of remaining lords in this game is less than 40% of the total number, the force with the most remaining lords will win this game. The only thing that made Asher feel relieved was that, because the Saints used the request for assistance to increase the number of lords on the human side, the possibility of human victory in this war was actually very high. The next thing to think about was how to survive in the hands of the gods. After all, the lords of the war game are not true believers of the gods. The wars in the past were all based on races. How could they be willing to accompany the gods to start a holy war now? But this event in front of him. Aishal looked at the event called the War of Heaven with a solemn look. She actually knew about the Wall of Size, Gao Qiang's territory. But what is the revival of the holy power? The liaison has not yet given the corresponding information. Logically speaking, as one of her own people, she should support Gao Qiang. But in an absolutely rational state at this moment, Aishal felt that this was not a good idea. The third option is completely unnecessary. No matter what the combat power level of both sides is, joining the all-out war against the revival of the holy power and the gods at the same time is definitely the most wrong option. Next, choose one of the two. In Aishal's eyes, the revival of the holy power should be a level weaker than the gods. But on the other hand, Aishal did not dare to guarantee that the gods were of one mind. In the world of the end-of-day god war, once the gods win the final victory, the next thing to come is definitely not the paradise described in the event. How to choose? Aishal touched his forehead with a headache. Sometimes, absolute rationality cannot guarantee an absolutely correct choice. Limited by the shackles of information and intelligence, even the most rational analysis will be of no avail. You don't have to worry. When Ze walked out from behind Aishal and gently rubbed Aishal's shoulders. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 135. Then he glanced at the sky fearfully and said softly, "This incident does not require us to make an immediate decision. It's not too late to look at other people before making a choice." Compared to Asher, this choice is actually not difficult for most lords. In fact, in the eyes of many lords, these three options can be completely eliminated as one. An all-out war against both at the same time is unrealistic. But they also don't know what restoration of the holy power is. What's more, most of the lords' territories are covered by the pantheon. Under the gaze of all the righteous gods, how could they dare to rebel right under their noses? Therefore, most lords chose to be loyal to the gods when the option first appeared. In the high-strength war panel, the number of hostile lords also increased. There are only a few people who choose to join Gao Qiang's side. Among them, the first one to join Gao Qiang was none other than Yana, who was pulled by Satan and hid in an unknown corner. "Why can you touch my panel?" Yana was staring at Satan with an ugly look as if he had eaten a fly. Just now, an event appeared in front of him, but before he could look at it, Satan directly clicked on it. By the time he reacted, he had already joined an all-out war. We don't have many people on our side. The hostile lords are beating rapidly in units of thousands. This is going to cost him his life. You are me and I am you, don't forget that. Satan laughed disdainfully. As for why he manipulated Yana's choice, he did not say clearly. Besides Yana, the second person who chose to join Gao Qiang's side was Suyukai. Unlike Yana, who didn't even have time to watch, Suyukai finally chose to join the powerful side after watching the incident. Glancing at his subordinates, Suyukai couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, due to his own lack of ability, it was not yet time for him to recruit the Paladin, the top unit of the Holy Light God system. Otherwise, I am afraid that the Paladin's loyalty will fall below the negative level at the moment he chooses to oppose the gods. So there's no more Gao Qiang looked at the war interface and saw that no lord had joined his side for a long time. It seems that they are really not optimistic about Gao Qiang and the revival of the holy power that Gao Qiang represents. However, the next moment, Gao Qiang suddenly raised his eyebrows. The chicken god chose to support the revival of the holy power, and all the lords under the chicken god automatically joined the all-out war against the gods. The Lord of Holy Light chooses to support the revival of holy power, and all lords under the Lord of Holy Light automatically join the all-out war against the gods. Snow God. The number of lords on the high-strength side is increasing at a rapid rate. Although it is nothing compared to the number of lords on the side of the gods, it is at least better than the few just now. At this moment, in the cathedral, Isle, who was still hesitating, suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the Lord of Holy Light above him in disbelief. What happened? What did she see? She, the saint of the Holy Light religion, was still hesitating, but the Lord of Holy Light, the enemy of the revival of holy power, did not hesitate to choose to join the side of the revival of holy power to fight against the gods together. Even the speed of joining is only behind that unknown so-called chicken god. It was as if he could feel Aisier's doubts and shock. A shadow of the Lord of Holy Light appeared in the cathedral. The moment the Lord of Holy Light appeared, all the paladins in the church knelt on one knee and paid tribute to the Lord of Light to express their respect. Obviously, the Lord of Holy Light has far more authority over the paladin than the Lord Aesel. The big hand made of Holy Light gently stroked down, and at the same time, the voice of the Lord of Holy Light also echoed in the center of the church. Kids, don't have any doubts. The Holy Light is always on the side of justice. Ixier's eyes moved. She always felt that she had used such words before. The Lord of Holy Light didn't pay attention to Asel's strangeness. Feeling the adoration of the paladins, the Lord of Holy Light continued to send down oracles. The Holy Light is always on the side of justice. Since the death of the God of Justice thousands of years ago, the Holy Light has represented justice. Boom! Boom! The paladin tapped the cross shield in his hand and shouted at the same time. For the Supreme Lord of Holy Light. At this point, Ixier could only sigh helplessly. She had no choice. For the current Ahir, no matter whether he chooses one or two, the final result is to join the revival of the holy power. Since you can't resist, you might as well just enjoy it. Wens, please pay attention to our allies, Ixier ordered behind him. The allies she talks about are naturally the factions of the righteous gods such as the sun and the bright moon. In this war game, the last of the three suns that the saint entered was there. Before the gods awakened, they were naturally worthy allies. But now, there is no telling. Wenzi nodded. He also had a hunch that after the change of stance, the people over there might no longer be friends. It is different from foreigners. Facing the two gods of the sun and the bright moon, the holy light god system has no walls. Once a war breaks out, it will be the most primitive and bloody meat-cutting battle. Seeing that Asher understood the meaning of his oracle, the figure of the Lord of Holy Light immediately dissipated in the cathedral. Above the sky, the Lord of Holy Light's smile quickly disappeared. Holy Light is the most loyal ally of justice, so he knows exactly how the God of Justice fell 10,000 years ago. He was killed by himself. It was also from that time that the Lord of Holy Light understood a truth. Victory is justice. Not the God of victory, but the victory in concept. It's a pity that they have been sleeping for too long, so long that the gods have forgotten why they survived in the past. Is it time that washed away their memories, or hatred that blinded their eyes? Perhaps both are possible, but the Lord of Holy Light doesn't care. Here it comes. Where the Lord of Holy Light is looking, a group of scorching sun suddenly rises. The hot breath rushes towards the Holy Light God system. And the Lord of Holy Light just raises his hand slightly. I say, let there be light. Instantly, these hot breaths were blocked by a curtain of light. But the barrier of the Lord of Holy Light can block the power of God, but it cannot prevent mortals from entering and leaving. One by one, the plate-armored knights with the emblem of the sun god engraved on their chests have stepped into the territory of holy light. Fortunately, Aisieter and Wenzi prepared in advance. A large number of walker troops of the Five Elements God system have set up defense lines at the contact point of the two god systems. In terms of combat effectiveness, the elite troops of the Five Elements God system are no less than the followers of the Sun God. Even after counting the number of people, the Five Elements God system is even better. For a while, the lords of the Sun God system did not dare to act rashly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 136. Holy Lord, you've gone too far. A dull voice came from the sky outside the light curtain. As if the sun had fallen into the ground, a ball of scorching sun slammed into the light curtain created by the Lord of Holy Light. Realizing that the light curtain could not be shaken, the figure stopped moving. Standing outside the light curtain, many game lords could see his appearance clearly. It was a figure wearing a majestic robe. The robe was mainly red, the texture was soft and smooth, like a flame under the sun, giving people a warm and hot feeling. Sun God. The Lord of Holy Light gently read out the other party's name. And, Goddess of the Moon. A cold silver light emerged from the side of the Sun God. Goddess of the Moon gently raised her head, as if to express her attitude. You are on the side of our enemies. Goddess of the Moon seemed unable to understand what the Lord of Holy Light was doing. At this moment, many lords on the ground did not rush to start fighting, but looked up at the sky. As a second-level world, the battle between gods is just a background for most lords. It was a battle that did not belong to them at all. Although the victory or defeat of gods would have an impact on themselves, for lords like them who participated in the war game, such things were beyond their control. After a pause, the Goddess of the Moon continued to speak. Why? Because we are all sinners, the Lord of Holy Light replied. Enough. The Sun God was obviously a hot-tempered person. We are not here to listen to your tricks to deceive believers. Puff. The Lord of Holy Light suddenly laughed out loud. Puff, ha 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 ha. What are you laughing at? The Sun God frowned slightly. After laughing for a long time, the Lord of Holy Light stopped laughing. A pressure instantly enveloped the Sun God. I laugh at you for actually forgetting everything that happened 10,000 years ago. All the gods are dead, how can we survive? Is it because we are the strongest? Listening to the question from the Lord of Holy Light, the Sun God fell into a daze. Are they the strongest? Of course not. Then how did they survive the catastrophe in ancient times? The Sun God suddenly covered his head. It seemed that his memory had been damaged by sleeping for too long. He forgot a piece of information, a very critical one. Let me help you recall it, the Lord of Holy Light suddenly said. Because among all the gods, we are the real sinners. The Lord of Holy Light pointed a finger at the Sun God. I saw with my own eyes that you backstabbed the god of lava, attacked and killed the god of fire, deceived the god of kitchen, and destroyed several large and small gods with your own hands. At that time, they were my enemies, the Sun God said. He didn't think there was anything wrong with this. If it was 10,000 years ago, the number of gods was like the stars in the sky. When would there not be a few so-called gods who died? Of course it's your enemy. The Lord of Holy Light did not refute, but turned his head to look at the Goddess of Bright Moon. Lord of Frozen Earth, Goddess of Cold Trees, Goddess of Night Crows, you have killed many gods, and many of them are even on good terms with you. The Goddess of Bright Moon frowned slightly, just as the Sun God said. You haven't remembered it yet. The Lord of Holy Light looked at the Goddess of Bright Moon with some disappointment. Do you have to say it so bluntly? On the day of the twilight of the gods, you stabbed your own camp in the back and threw yourself into the arms of the enemy. Yes, it's the one you hate the most now. Have you all forgotten? Shut up. The sun god interrupted the Lord of Holy Light. He was covering his head at this moment, as if he didn't want to recall the past. It was he who chose to forget those memories in 10,000 years, just to gamble on a possibility of killing that existence. 10,000 years, they are not the only ones who are weak. Thinking of a certain existence, the face of the sun god's body has become a little more gloomy, and even the eyes looking at the Lord of Holy Light are stained with hatred. Holy Lord, your ability to deceive people with lies is even more than tricks. Today, I will not let you go. After the sun god was furious, a mixture of light yellow and light red flashed in the sky from time to time. The internal strife between the righteous gods came faster than expected. On the ground, the lords of the sun god's side also moved. It has nothing to do with the sun god, but they received an order from another son of the saint in the game of the saint. Get rid of the holy light god system and take the unused source 6 beauty from Aicier's hands. The other party does not care how much power the saint will lose. After all, it was only a second-level battlefield. Even if all of them were lost, it would not shake the saint's position in the upper battlefield. In comparison, being able to reasonably obtain the source from Aicier's hands was even more significant to the Son of God. After all, now they were enemies in a total war. Is there a more suitable opportunity than this? The disadvantages of promoting the Son of God from the bottom. Aixier looked at the advancing front of the sun god system with a cold gaze. The choice made by the other party made her very disappointed. Obviously, the three people who entered this game were promoted to the management level by the saints to make up for the loss of the emerging forces. As a result, there was nothing in common between the three. Apart from himself, one of them loved beauty, and the other was not ambitious and only wanted to take things out of his own hands. Working with such people made Aixier feel sick from the bottom of his heart. Wenzi, use up the source essence. Hearing Aixier's words, Wenzi's face was stunned, but soon nodded and opened the box that kept the beautiful source essence. Aixier looked in another direction. If nothing unexpected happens, as long as Gao Qiang also agrees to join the saints. In this war game, the number of saints is just right. Of course, the premise is that they can survive. A war contribution list of the camps has appeared in front of Aixier. On the side of reviving the holy power, Gao Qiang is far ahead with 300,000 contributions. Aixier, who has been in this war game for a long time, has only a little over 100,000 contributions. As for the other lords on the list, there were even fewer of them. Suddenly, the contribution of many people on the list began to gradually increase. I shall look towards the front line. The Sun Knights had already collided with the troops commanded by Wenzi. Due to the tacit cooperation of the five elements god system's multiple arms, the Sun god system did not gain any advantage in the first round of collision. However, the sound of the collapse of the heavy objects behind him hit Aishel's heart heavily. Turning his head to look, the wall facing the foreign race collapsed, just like the five elements god system at that time. There are new gods coming down and participating in this war against the holy light god system. Can they win? Or how long can they hold on? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 137. Wow! Shasha ate all the green pepper and meat skewers in her hand in one bite. Since the army set out, the daily meat consumption has also increased exponentially. Just look at the number of primitive gods in the West. Not enough to eat, really not enough to eat. Fortunately, there are two great gods, Zhenshan and Hanyu, otherwise the food for the army alone would be a headache for a while. Hayukin calculated the daily food consumption with dissatisfaction, and then glared at Baihexia who was at a loss. Why are the granaries filled with bombs? No, I don't know. Baihexia looked away and hummed an awkward little song. Really? Hayukin narrowed her eyes slightly. Gao Qiang couldn't hear the conversation between the two afterwards. Since the army set out, he was hugged in the soft arms of Data Deleted again. I don't know why, Gao Qiang felt that Data Deleted liked to stick to him, just like a clingy cat. The command of the troops has been transferred to Juluo by Gao Qiang. Relying on Juluo's golden entry, advance and retreat with moderation. Hundreds of thousands of troops are rushing around in the west like a mud truck. As for now, Juluo is sitting on the top of Data Deleted, looking far into the east. As they get closer to the junction of the west and the east, the bones scattered all over the ground and eaten by the barbarians are getting fewer and fewer. Instead, there is a thriving vitality. But everyone knows that this vitality is not a spontaneous behavior of life, but a gift from God. We're almost there. Juluo shook his legs gently and reminded Gao Qiang. The lair of the God of Life is also our first stop in the east. The advance of hundreds of thousands of troops is enough to make the ground tremble, and it is impossible for the gods not to sense it. Therefore, in the direction where Juluo's eyes are looking, a green figure emerges from the sky. The God of Life, the God who controls life. He has no fixed form, and the form of life is abstract, so he can be anything you imagine. Lowering his head, the God of Life's eyes briefly stayed on the body of Data Deleted for a few seconds. Then, his eyes retracted. They are coming. The words of the God of Life resounded in the ears of every lord of the life pantheon like an oracle. For a moment, all the lords learned about the approach of foreign enemies. In Lan Yan's tree house, the lords of various tribes gathered together again. But this time, there were obviously fewer people. Only Lan Yan was left as a representative of the elves, and the representative of the god of Trickster on the shadow side also disappeared. The main pantheon on the Minotaur side simply did not send anyone over, and the one who contacted was just a leader of a primitive god. As for the remaining small races with weak combat power, there was no change because they acted very cautiously. The atmosphere in the treehouse was a little silent at this moment. It was Lan Yan who spoke first. After coughing twice, Lan Yan looked at the lords of other tribes. What do you think of the current situation? The representative lord of the Turan chuckled and said with disdain, what else can we say? Isn't it clearly written on the war panel? Lan Yan's eyes moved slightly. He understood what the Lord of the Turan meant. Although the Holy Light God system stood on the opposite side of the gods for some reason. But the Holy Light God system does not represent all the lords on the human side. After removing some individual players and saints distributed in other god systems, the Holy Light God system only has a few thousand lords. It seems a lot, but the number of lords standing on the side of the gods is close to 100,000. If the soldiers and horses in the hands of the lords of each tribe are counted, it will reach tens of millions. In this way, it seems that the Holy Light God system is a bit like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, overestimating its own strength. Compared to the confidence of the Minotaur, the representative of the Shadow clan sat quietly aside, making it difficult for people to understand his thoughts for a while. He just listened to the discussion between the lords of various tribes quietly, like a little transparent. Ying Cheng, what do you think? Lan Yan's sudden voice made the representatives of many tribes present look at the silent Shadow clan lord. The Shadow clan is definitely a well-developed race in this war game. Although it is still far behind the human race who used the rescue order and had a constant supply of reserve troops, it is definitely the best of the best compared to other races. What do I think? Ying Cheng raised his eyes slightly, and his eyes swept over the strange-looking alien lords. How did the trick god system disappear? You probably don't know yet. Compared to others, Ying Cheng was not very optimistic. The trick god system collapsed in the west, and the speed of collapse was so fast that the Shadow clan didn't react. The result was that the Shadow Clan lost half of its manpower inexplicably in this war game. No matter how you look at it, they have no chance of winning this war. In this all-out war, the Dark God system will help, Shadow City said. This is the Dark God's intention, and he can't change it. But Shadow City paused and continued, don't expect our Shadow Clan to put in much effort. Unlike the spokesperson of the God of Tricks, Yingqing's tone was more direct and his thoughts were purer. He would never do such a thing as helping others. After hearing Yingqing's tone, the representatives of many small races present obviously weakened a lot. After all, many people did not want to join this all-out war. The win or loss of a war game was nothing. Even though they were in various god systems now, who would care about the life and death of the gods after leaving the war game? Seeing that they were obviously in an advantageous situation, the momentum on the scene began to gradually decline. Lan Yan suddenly regretted mentioning this to Ying Cheng. Fortunately, it was not too late to remedy the situation. Looking at the others, Lan Yan reminded them, we are not without interests, are we? War contribution, isn't it the best reward for you? When it comes to war contribution, some representatives of races who knew that victory was hopeless regained their fighting spirit. Contribution means how much benefit they can bring out of this war game. Forget about the victory of the race, you have to get some benefits for yourself, right? Lan Yan breathed a sigh of relief for the time being. Although the gods can bring out tens of millions of troops, it is hard to say how much cohesion they have. If people's hearts are scattered, they will really be scattered. When the representatives of each race reached an agreement, several gods they mentioned also appeared in the territory of the God of Life. Resisting the disgusting breath, the figure of the God of Life appeared in the sky and nodded to the gods who came. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 138. Among the gods who came, only the goddess of abundance had a good relationship with the God of Life. As for the remaining gods of wine, darkness, etc., if they were placed 10,000 years ago, they would definitely be the most determined enemies of the life system. A god who can use life to make wine, a god who makes life unable to grow, how can he and the God of Life not pee in the same pants? It's a pity that the present is not as good as the past. Noticing Gao Qiang's advancing army, even if the God of Life is unwilling, he has to live in harmony with the other gods. After all, they now have a common enemy. The old system. The world does not need the old days, and the old antiques should lie in the coffin of the old antiques. After the gods on the sky greeted each other, they looked towards the boundary line of the territory of the life system. At the border, several primitive gods hid in the corner, covered by green plants blessed by the God of Life. In terms of quality, these primitive gods are inferior to those primitive gods who fight all day long in the west. But in the east, the main fighting force is not them at all, but the warriors recruited by the lords of various war games. Approaching. The first pagan knight crossed the dividing line and stepped into the territory of the God of Life. Looking at the line of the revival of holy power, Sasha, as the flag-bearing saint, had no awareness of leading by example. Holding the flag and following behind many pagan knights, Sasha even yawned out of boredom. But in front of Sasha, the pagan knights wearing full sets of heavy armor resolutely had a steel torrent posture. On the way to rushing before, I don't know how many primitive gods fell under the hooves of these pagan knights, making their own contributions to the 40th edition of cooking methods. Now more and more pagan knights are stepping into the territory of the God of Life. Almost all the flowers, plants, and shrubs on the road they rode on were flattened so that the subsequent troops could walk smoothly. But this behavior, placed on the territory of the God of Life, is completely a blasphemy. To the God of Life, every flower and every blade of grass is life. This attitude of contempt for life is enough to arouse his anger. When do we start? The gods looked at him sideways. They could already hear the obvious anger in the voice of the god of life. "Don't worry, it will be soon, soon," the god of darkness said sinisterly. Under the gaze of the gods in the sky, the pagan knights only needed to move forward a distance to encounter the ambushes that the lords of various tribes had already ambushed. If the holy power of stagnation had not awakened too early. If the gods had awakened first, these ambushes would probably have become sharp knives stabbing the holy power of stagnation. In the forest, with the arrival of the pagan knights, an extremely quiet attitude was presented, which was completely inversely proportional to the vitality that could be seen everywhere. Until a certain moment. The plants grew faster and separated the pagan knights as individuals. The blessing of the goddess of abundance was fully displayed here. Then the god of darkness descended his power. The light in the sky was instantly covered. Under the eternal night, only creatures blessed by the god of darkness could see the world clearly. On the ground, a Minotaur lord smiled cruelly. So many gods blessed this all-out war at the same time. Since entering this war game, they have never fought such a rich war. He took out the wine blessed by the god of wine from his waist and drank it down in big gulps. The Minotaur's muscles burst out with more surging power. The war has begun. In the pitch-black darkness, a Minotaur warrior suddenly appeared in front of the pagan knight. Because of the blessing of the god of darkness, they can see as bright as day even if they walk in the darkness. The pagan knight can't see him, but finding the location of the pagan knight is just a piece of cake for him. He slowly stood up in front of the pagan knight. The size of the Minotaur warrior is even taller than the pagan knight on horseback. "Go to hell." With scarlet eyes, the Minotaur warrior smashed down with the stick in his hand. Bang! The stick collided with the armor, and under the huge force, several cracks appeared on the stick. As if sensing something, the pagan knight stabbed the knight's lance in the direction of the attack just now, and the lance penetrated the flesh. The Minotaur warrior widened his eyes. The knight's lance was pulled out from his heart, and the breath of life gradually flowed from his body. How can a flesh and blood body without armor win over steel? However, in just a moment, the rich life force was poured into the body of the Minotaur warrior. The broken heart was repaired, and the skin was restored to its original state. The blessing of the god of life naturally could not achieve such an effect. To achieve this situation, there is only one possibility, the god of life himself. In addition to the god of life, the primitive gods ambushed on the ground also rushed out of disguise and attacked the pagan knight's line. Relying on the manic power of those primitive gods, the pagan knight's front was broken in a short time. With the cooperation of several righteous gods in the sky, the pagan knight's team began to gradually reduce in number as soon as several primitive gods left the field. On the other hand, with the multiple blessings of the gods, the combat effectiveness of the warriors of various tribes continued to soar upwards. It seems that victory in this war is only a matter of time for them. So, how long will they continue this useless work? Outside the black curtain, Sasha has stopped and yawned. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of vassal soldiers also stopped. Knowing that they were ambushed, they had no intention of retreating. Sasha could feel the fierce battle in the black curtain, but she didn't understand the meaning of this battle. Those trapped in the black curtain were all soldiers of the old system. Sasha shook the flag in her hand. Obviously, as long as she was not killed, everyone would not die. So what is the meaning of this war? At this time, a sad music was played by the bards behind everyone, as if they were mourning for someone. Gao Qiang and others didn't feel anything. But when it came to the warriors of various tribes in the black curtain, they clearly felt a heart-wrenching breath. They have been fighting with the army of the revival of holy power in the black curtain for so long. Even if the pagan knights were made of steel, they would eventually be twisted off their heads by the blessed and muscular Minotaurs. For the Shadow Clan, they could even avoid their armor and send their sharp blades directly into their flesh and blood. But why, after so many pagan knights fell, their number seemed to have not changed much. After an elven archer shot the last arrow in his hand, his pupils suddenly shrank. Look at the ground. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita D. Chapter 139. On the ground, the pagan knights whose limbs and necks were twisted off. They stood up again under an unknown force, and even the broken limbs were repaired by twisted tentacles that came out of nowhere. This strange feeling was like mending a doll. Combined with the morning music from afar, a breath of fear gradually spread among the warriors of various tribes. Clicking sounds continued to appear from all around. Some were the sounds of bones being reset. And the rest were the sounds of firearms being loaded. The knights put down their night guns and took out the huge muskets behind them. Because of the in-depth penetration of the warriors of various tribes, they had successfully mixed up with the pagan knights. After the fallen pagan knights revived, they were even more trapped. Although they could not see in the dark, for the pagan knights at this moment. As long as there was any sound of movement, the muskets in their hands would fire. The muskets of the pagan knights were not the toys of the various orthodox sects. After the large caliber muskets with improved ammunition have the characteristics of extremely high temperature, the meat can be roasted directly the moment it hits the meat. Once this weapon is used on warriors of various tribes. After being hit, even if the god of life comes in person, it can only be said that there is no way to save the situation. After all, he is only the god of life, and there is no way to turn a piece of cooked meat back to life. Wait, those ghosts are doing it on purpose. A lord suddenly said with an ugly face. Because the next attack of the pagan knights does not distinguish between enemies and friends. The same bullet, hitting the pagan knights, does not seem to hinder their resurrection. On the contrary, it is because the firepower network is too dense. The fear of warriors of various tribes who can see things has exploded. Every time they pass in front of a gun muzzle, it seems that they have walked through the gates of hell. Although not every time they are unlucky enough to be shot by invisible pagan knights. But the feeling of passing through the gates of hell many times is not pleasant. In addition, no method has been found to successfully kill the pagan knights until now. All of a sudden, the war weariness of the warriors of all tribes in the forest began to soar. After the war weariness soared from 50% to more than 80%, the war weariness gradually began to slow down. You know, this total war has just begun. Once the war weariness reaches 100%, the lords of all tribes dare not think about what will happen next. Fortunately, they have not completely failed. Some lords put their hopes on the gods. In this total war, after all, their game lords are just a bonus. What we really want to see is the duel between the various righteous gods and the revival of the holy power. It is obvious that even on the side of the gods, the number of combat power they have is obviously more than that of the revival of the holy power. As long as the gods take action, everything will be fine. That's right, as long as the gods take action, everything will be fine. Sister Wang Chuan. Sasha kept shaking Wang Chuan's shoulders. Hurry up and kill all those guys who are in the way. My sixth sense tells me that there are several new ingredients in the forest. But this pitch black thing has covered them all. It's really annoying. Wang Chuan was dizzy and dazed by Sasha. After waiting for Sasha to stop, Wang Chuan jumped to the side with a small step. He glanced at Sasha with empty eyes. After a few seconds, Wang Chuan suddenly nodded. Putting his hands on his chest, Wang Chuan made a gesture of praying. Lost people. Wang Chuan chanted a few words in a low voice. The cold breath completely covered the vitality on the ground. In a trance, figures seemed to appear beside everyone, and then left the next moment. Among them were barbarians and warriors from 10,000 years ago. As expected, all these people were once lost on the surface of the Huangchuan River. Finally, after a few minutes, a huge figure appeared shakily. Feeling a sound like an earthquake, Gao Qiang forcibly broke free from the embrace of Data Deleted and pulled his head out of his body. The first thing he saw after getting out was a figure that covered the sky and the sun. Mountain God Zhuluo explained. Her eyes were also on that figure. It was obvious that the mountain god was not in a good state. There was no trace of spiritual light on his body made of hard stone, just like a puppet that could only wander aimlessly. After the mountain god, another god's body suddenly appeared near everyone. The North Wind God. Suddenly, Gao Qiang turned his head and looked at Wang Chuan. Wang Chuan was still in a praying posture at this moment. And her form was Huangquan. In Huangquan form, Wang Chuan can summon the creatures that were once lost in the Huangchuan River. Does this mean the mountain god, the North Wind God and other gods have actually been lost on the surface of the Huangchuan River? The temples that worship them have not received their protection for countless years. Because they can't protect themselves. Boom! The huge body of the god of mountains broke into the darkness. Almost in the blink of an eye, he crushed a primitive god. These newly born primitive gods seemed too small and fragile in front of the lost ancient god. It was a pity that such a powerful god had become a ghost wandering on the road to the underworld. Boom! The destruction of the god of mountains continued. The power beyond the upper limit of the world was a unique characteristic of the gods. But the god of mountains was once a member of the gods. The lords of various tribes present had not even developed the technology tree to the peak state of the second-order world. Therefore, when facing the god of mountains, they were completely powerless and could only watch the boulder pressing down on them mercilessly. At this time, the god of the north wind raised his hand. In the direction of the vassal army, the believers of the god of the north wind raised their crossbows as if they had a flash of inspiration. At the moment when the arrow was launched into the air, a hurricane blew, causing the arrow to shoot into the large black curtain almost like a bullet. The arrival of the two lost gods made the war weariness of the coalition forces of various tribes, whose morale was already low, even higher. The reinforcements from their gods that they expected did not come. What all the lords did not know was that just now, the gods felt a terrifying pressure from Data Deleted. Your last holy place was destroyed. Your god Data Deleted was successfully angered. Gao Qiang felt a touch behind his body, and he was gently put down by Data Deleted. Then, Data Deleted's body began to grow bigger and bigger, and became more and more distorted. One by one, ferocious eyeballs emerged from the body of Data Deleted. And this time, there was no Zinke to repair his golden body. The ferocious big mouth opened on the dark body of Data Deleted. Before the gods could react, the tentacles had already stretched to the sky. And in the next moment, it wrapped the weakest god of plenty and sent it into the big mouth of Data Deleted. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 140. The lords of various tribes strangled in the dark curtain did not notice the abnormality outside the dark curtain. It was just that the green plants used to separate the pagan knights suddenly became sparse. Many people did not take what happened just now to heart. God is not omnipotent, maybe the goddess of abundance is just tired. Only the gods high above the sky know what happened just now. Abundance, was it eaten just like that? The voice of the god of darkness became a little strange. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. In his memory, the gap between them and the old days should not be so big. In the battle that ended the gods 10,000 years ago, the old days did not seem to show such overwhelming combat power. You know, no matter how weak the goddess of abundance is, she is also one of the many righteous gods. It is reasonable to crush the newborn gods. It is too outrageous to crush the ancient goddess of abundance. In 10,000 years, have we become weaker, or has he become stronger? Dionysus couldn't help muttering. At this moment, the blush on the body of the god has faded a lot. The death of the goddess of abundance just now almost scared the god of wine and made him sober up. The other gods also expressed their disbelief. Only the god of life seemed to be stunned in the same place, motionless. The god of darkness frowned and looked. He knew that the goddess of abundance and the god of life were good friends. But given the selfishness of the gods, the death of a close friend should not make the god of life so sad, right? The god of life finally spoke. Just at the moment when Data Deleted launched the attack. He sensed the life breath of Data Deleted. He is 3 times stronger than 10,000 years ago. There was a sudden silence above the sky. The god of darkness stiffened his head and looked at the ground. 3 times. After 10,000 years of sleep, the gods have weakened a lot due to the passage of time. In comparison, even if the opponent is not weakened by time, it is not so outrageous that he is 3 times stronger, right? But if what the god of life said is true, the already dark face of the god of darkness seems to be a little darker. Why didn't you say it earlier? After saying that, before the other gods reacted, the god of darkness turned around and left. 10,000 years ago, the gods were defeated miserably. Now that the opponent is 3 times stronger, how can they be the opponent of the opponent? It is better to sleep for another 10,000 years. There will always be a new era. Maybe if I sleep for tens of thousands of years, the old era will be over? There are many gods who have the same idea as the god of darkness. As righteous gods, they have been sleeping for 10,000 years, so they don't need to sleep for another 10,000 years. However, the next moment, something that makes the gods tremble happened. The god of darkness, who was about to escape, was pierced by the aurora that fell from the sky before he ran far. Although the aurora only blocked the opponent for a moment, it also created an opportunity for Data Deleted. Several elongated tentacles rushed towards the sky, forcibly bound the torso of the god of darkness, and dragged the god of darkness into the big mouth of Data Deleted. A huge chewing sound was heard. The remaining gods looked at the existence blocking them with embarrassment. Aurora Saint. A god called out the other party's name, but received no response. Another existence that was once lost in the forgotten river. His soul has been lost, and only a body is left wandering aimlessly on the Yellow Spring Road. At this time, the body of the god of the north wind also rose high above the sky, vaguely encircling the gods. The gods glared at the 2 bodies in front and behind. In terms of combat power, the bodies of the 2 gods will never be able to defeat them. But all the other party has to do is to delay time. A god glanced at the person below with embarrassment. A big mouth covering the ground continued to chew. The dark god was just like a jelly bean in his mouth. It seemed that after eating this jelly bean, he would choose a new one until all the gods were eaten. Gao Qiang didn't know what the gods in the sky were thinking. Looking at Data Deleted's body suddenly becoming extremely twisted, it was completely no longer as cute as before. But I don't know if it was because of the constant san value or the blessing of eating fish, Gao Qiang just couldn't be afraid. Similarly, the others present did not have any doubts about Data Deleted's changing appearance. As Data Deleted chewed faster, the body of the dark god was gradually torn apart in his mouth. As a result, the black curtain summoned by the dark god gradually dissipated from the eyes of everyone. Without the cover of the black curtain, the lords of the gods and their troops were completely exposed to Gao Qiang's eyes. The number of those warriors was so huge that they almost occupied the entire forest, and the total number was several times the total number of living forces in Gao Qiang's hands. But after glancing at the war interface, Gao Qiang smiled slightly. War exhaustion. 54%, 89%. After being hit repeatedly, although the actual casualties may be only tens of thousands, less than 1% of the coalition forces. But the morale of the coalition forces has almost collapsed. On Gao Qiang's side, the only war exhaustion is still added by the hundreds of thousands of vassal troops. Due to the tyranny of data deleted and the desire to reshape the world order. Those vassal troops didn't dare to do so, and they wouldn't increase their war weariness. As for the warriors of the old system, as long as Sasha, the flag-bearing saint, was still there, they wouldn't die at all, and their war weariness wouldn't increase. If Gao Qiang held on for a while longer, he wouldn't have to fight against any army of tens of millions, and the other side would scatter like birds and beasts. At this time, a vibration suddenly came from behind Gao Qiang. Turning his head, he saw that after the dark curtain of the god of darkness dissipated, hundreds of thousands of vassal troops also began to advance towards the territory of the god of life. The number of these vassal troops was dozens of times that of Gao Qiang's direct troops. Now that the army was advancing together, the momentum of the coalition forces, which were already weakened, was even weaker. Moreover, after the dark curtain dissipated, the pagan knights could see things with their eyes, and they finally didn't need to aim with their ears for the guns in their hands. Bang bang bang. A burst of gunfire rang out in the forest. The pagan knights jumped on their horses and shuttled back and forth between the coalition troops, and from time to time the sound of muskets rang out. Although the coalition forces also had fire guns, the long-range penetration of the projectiles they fired was not even as good as that of the exquisite crossbows. It was okay to hit leather armor or unarmored units at ordinary times, but now facing the fully armed pagan knights, it was impossible to break the defense. Of course, there was also the mountain god that was rampaging in the forest. Every time the mountain god's body moved, it was like a landslide. Just one step would cause a large area of land to collapse. As one of the gods who drove all living beings out of the earth in ancient times, his power was enough to make mortals tremble.